today we're going to be tackling a critical issue that has been making headlines. We spoke about it earlier, so we're going to be having a deeper conversation on it with our guests. We're going to be looking at the fight against corruption in Nigeria. Now, our focus is on the drama surrounding Yahaya Bello, the former governor of Kogi State, and his appearance before the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. Now, if you've been following trends both on social media and online media outlets, you'd see that Yahaya Bello and, his whole brawl with the EFCC has made rounds in the news yesterday. So now, yesterday, according to reports, Yahaya Bello voluntarily honored the EFCC's invitation regarding alleged fraud and money laundering charges totaling to 80.2 billion naira. However, the EFCC claims he didn't appear, leaving many confused. Bello's media team stated that he was told to leave and return later, only to face a surprise midnight arrest attempt by EFCC operatives at the Kogi government lodge in Asokoro. This development raises several questions, to the fight against corruption and with the whole Yahaya Bello saga. Is the EFCC's action a genuine fight against corruption? Because, they came out to say that he appeared, and his media team said he was told to leave when he voluntarily appeared, and then they're coming to arrest him in the middle of the night, and the EFCC is claiming we didn't see him. So this has a lot of questions. Is the EFCC's action a genuine fight against corruption, or is it a political witch hunt? What does it mean for Nigeria's anti-corruption efforts? So joining us via Zoom today is Eze Onyekbere. Mr. Onyekbere is a lawyer with specialization in developmental law, including fiscal governance and freedom of information, anti-corruption, extractive industries, political finance, gender and exclusion, human rights and constitutional reforms. Now, over the last 34 years, he has worked on electric power sector reforms, privatization, gender and trade policy, and liberalization of education. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Eze Onyekbere.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, it's good to have you on the show. Now, with Mr. Onyekbere today, we're going to analyze and unravel the complexity of this Yahaya Bello's case, so let's stay tuned. But kicking off first, Mr. Onyekbere, what's your thought on this whole back and forth that has been playing out between Yahaya Bello and the EFCC, dating from when they all started up until the developments we're receiving now?
Well, not just my thoughts. The thought of a reasonable person who sits back and analyzes the whole scenario of the facts leading up to yesterday and today. First, someone was accused of an offense, or the EFCC investigated, and by their own standards, they found prima facie evidence of the commission of a crime leading to drafting of charges and, of course, the arraignment in absentia, and he is being asked to report to the EFCC, which he did not. You recall we heard he was in a house. EFCC surrounded the house some months ago, and of course, a sitting governor from his state came in and whisked him away. And that was the beginning. He was declared wanted over 3-4 months ago. And we are reliably informed, which EFCC hasn't denied, that he came to the EFCC office in a convoy in grandeur. And reports coming out of the EFCC from both the social media and some other media organizations is that their protocols say you do not take possession and arrest a man who comes in a grandeur. That he was in a convoy with the governor of his state, some senators, and maybe some other political heavyweights. And then they asked him to leave. At some point in time yesterday, I saw something on social media saying that, oh, he did not come voluntarily, that he was arrested in a sting operation. Thereafter, EFCC came out formally to say, oh, he is not in our custody. We haven't seen him. And then later in the night, a place where he purportedly is sleeping, we are hearing that they're surrounding the place. Now, this is a man you have declared wanted for over 3-4 months now. His arraignment has been stalled because you've not been able to get him before the judge. So the expectation is that anywhere you see him, you move quickly to arrest him since he's been declared wanted. And more or less, I think there's a bench warrant against him to enforce the orders of the court. So what exactly was the reason why he was left to go when he came in grandeur, so to say, and in a convoy? I am not aware of any law that says if you report to the EFCC or to the police station or to any law enforcement agency with your governor, with your senator, with some political heavyweights, that you should be allowed to go. He doesn't have immunity. The immunity of the governor does not extend beyond the person of the governor. So the immunity of the governor, even in his presence, does not cover him. So EFCC has some explanation to do. Unless they are able to convince Nigerians that Yahaya Bello's media team is lying, that he appeared at the EFCC office. Whatever protocols they have against arresting a person who comes in grandeur, if that is true that they have such a protocol, is a protocol that goes to no issue. Is a protocol that is defeatist, that will make their work extremely difficult. So they have to explain to Nigerians, if it is true that Yahaya Bello came, why he was not arrested. So clearly, after 3-4 months of declaring a person wanted, and recall that this is the same EFCC that when Asokoro delayed in appearing before them, they went as far as doing an American movie, climbing the roof of a 1- or 2-story building, coming in from the roof through the ceiling, and, all kinds of drama, like a high-profile movie, So if that is the EFCC, how come somebody voluntarily came, somebody who has been declared wanted? If you recall, this is also the same thing about Nigerian security. You can't get Yahaya Bello, who is in town, who is just very much around. But the same Nigerian security architecture was able to go to Kenya to abduct a certain Nnamdi Kanu to come and stand trial in Nigeria. Meanwhile, the person in Nigeria, you can't get him. He reports to your station, you let him go, and starts some posing again, you want to arrest him. Something is fundamentally flawed and missing. And EFCC has a lot of explanations to do to Nigerians about this theatrics and about this high-level drama. Right. We are not satisfied. Right. That is not why taxpayers' money is being used to maintain the EFCC. They should explain to Nigerians, to show cause, why they did what they did. Otherwise, what they did is outrageous and illegal.
At this point now, Nigerians are questioning the decisions of the EFCC and what they've done so far. Just like you said, Nigerians deserve answer to understand fully what their reason is, because like you said, first of all, you said he showed up and you say they didn't see him, and the whole theatrics that is happening. So what does this, at this point, what would you have to say about the EFCC's role in the fight against corruption? This move and the several moves they've made, is this putting questions, especially in the minds of Nigerians and you, on their, their intention? Do they have genuine intentions towards the fight against corruption, or it might just be a witch hunt they are on for?
Well, I don't want to talk about the witch hunt, because from what they've told Nigerians, there is evidence to show that Yahaya Bello may have mismanaged the resources of the state or indulged in corruption or abuse of office. So, but what the critical challenge is that reading all the facts so far to make sense out of it, the question is, all animals are equal, but some appear to be more equal than others. So it's not a question of witch hunt. It's a lack of political will now for Yahaya Bello to be brought before a court and his prosecution proceeding expeditiously. So I don't want to see it as a witch hunt. It's like giving the impression that the EFCC is a little bit selective, or that their hands are being tied by some powers bigger than them, which is not allowing them to come full force, to come blaring like they usually do. These are the people who are reported to go into hostels or hotels in the night, shoot into the air, scare everybody, including those who are in their underwears, carry all of them to their stations, simply because they're suspecting they could be 419ers or Yahoo boys. Now, somebody appears before you in person, and there are all these stories of appearing in grandeur. This is something, like I said, giving the impression that the fight against corruption is becoming selective or is being hampered by forces that are high up in the political ladder, which is now hindering the EFCC from doing what it normally should have done.
fight against corruption in general, moving beyond the case of Yahaya Bello. Earlier, we had conversations with Nigerians on phone. They called in to air their opinions and express disappointment in the fight against corruption, saying that they've really not seen any improvement and it's just a show, meaning that they've not seen, the fight against corruption having meaningful impact. At this point in time, we've had corruption in Nigeria is deeply rooted and it's been here from inception. So can you throw a bit light on, what could be learned from, are there any lessons at all that any administration has set in place in the fight against corruption that could help better, the situation we are at the moment when it comes to corrupt officials and apprehending them and, making them, pay for what they've done?
So the lesson is not for those in office because they're part of the problem. The lesson, and the big one, is for the average Nigerian, madam who is interviewing me and me who is being interviewed, and the voter. Let's cast our mind back. Permit me to go back to the Ribadu days. Before he left office, or shortly after he left office, he listed some governors of his era who he said from evidence available to them, to EFCC then, had looted their estates dry, and which he was planning to conclude investigation and prosecute after they left office. Go and check the names of the people on that list. Thereafter, well, fast forward to shortly before the last election, EFCC declared the current Senate president wanted. He was playing hide and seek, saying he was sick, he couldn't come. Before you could say Jack Robinson, he never honored that invitation. He went back, contested for a Senate seat. By some magic from the Supreme Court, he was asked to run from the senatorial zone. By another magic, he became the Senate president. He's never answered that call. That file is still cold. And if you look at the files that Ribadu referred to, it includes somebody who is sitting at the very top of Nigeria today. Now, you must belong to a certain category of conscience, or you must make sure your hands are clean. You can't be among those who should be prosecuted, and you are now the person to appoint those who will be heading prosecutorial agencies. Or you have had an invitation to come and explain things to EFCC. You didn't have that, honor that invitation. Before we could say Jack Robinson, you are now the #1 legislator in the country. How do you think that the anti-corruption war can go on when the persons who are supposed to be in charge and when you have to ordinarily have cases to answer? So it is not a lesson for those in power because they always have dead bodies to hide. It is a lesson for the voter. Somebody could not be frontally accused of corruption. He's hiding under the law, bringing lawyers with subterfuge, postpone cases, adjourn them. And you continue electing him. You continue electing him to the Senate. He runs for presidency. He runs for governorship. And then you keep quiet. So that lesson for us is that if we want to change the narrative, we should elect people who have a clean record. We should elect men and women of conscience, moral rectitude, who can challenge you to go and investigate them, that there are no hidden skeletons. And not even when it is clear that somebody is mean, is corrupt. You recall that somebody told the court outside of our shores that if his credentials, educational background and co are revealed, that he will suffer irreparable, these were his words, put in court by his lawyer. I will suffer irreparable damage and harm. But we said, no, let him be there. So let's not blame the people there. We put them there. Or we simply refuse to do the needful. So are you expecting me, if I'm guilty of a crime, to go and prosecute myself? It's not done. The first law of nature is self-preservation. I would rather have stolen 100 billion. I will come after you, even though you have not done anything, to blackmail you when I know I'm the real criminal. If you give me powers. That's the truth of the matter.
All right. I love the fact that you've pointed out to high-profile cases in Nigeria. Now, how do these, let's look at high-profile cases and public trust. Nigerians, based on the analysis and, the information I've gotten this morning from those that have called, it is evident that Nigerians have lost complete and total trust in anything called fight against corruption in Nigeria. Like you said, it's like a play of TikTok where, there's the person who is meant to be persecuted is now back in power and all of that drama. So what's your thought on what impact do high-profile cases which have not been seen to the end have on public trust?
The message is clear. Still as much as possible if you have the opportunity. As soon as you leave office, surround yourself with high-profile lawyers, the members of the inner bar. Let EFCC make the noise, file the cases. Maximum, this one is even doing drama. You can even submit yourself, like Fayose did. After a week or two, maximum, your lawyers file for your bail. Everybody is okay. He has a right to free his liberty. He has not been found guilty until proven innocent. The court will grant you bail. You go, and from behind, you'll be filing all kinds of motions and applications. Anything the judge says that you are not happy with at the court of first instance, the High Court, you go to the Court of Appeal. If you finish with the Court of Appeal, you go to the Supreme Court. So a case that ordinarily we should have ended in 1 year, maximum 2, for the next 4 or 5 years is talk. At some point in time, some civil society organizations compiled under the Stop Impunity campaign, they compile what they call high-profile cases gone to sleep. And we are thinking that we need to revisit that list now. Each of them talk about the stage, how long they've been in court, how much is involved in terms of resources allegedly stolen or mismanaged, and what those resources can do in terms of number of women who usually die giving birth to the next generation who have been saved, the number of school children out of the 20 million, who that kind of money should have brought back to school, the number of primary healthcare facilities, the number of potholes in our roads, which we could have filled up, and of course, avoided all those head-on collisions and accidents that normally take lives. And the number, liters of millions of potable water that should have stopped all these waterborne diseases that all around the corner. So in essence, there are hundreds of high-profile cases before the courts gone to sleep. When the Administration of Criminal Justice Act was enacted, everybody hoped that all these criminal trials, particularly anti-corruption cases, will be speeded up. And I had expected any government, particularly the executive and the judiciary, they should have come to setting us special courts for prosecution of corruption and let these court cases be happening on a day-to-day basis. The Chief Justice of the Federation will devise trial procedures and rules for appeals that make it such that you cannot simply stagnate cases from point A to point B. So that clearly, once you are arraigned, 6 months, 7 months max, you are either set free or convicted. If you are not happy, you go to the Court of Appeal. If you are not happy at the Court of Appeal, you go to the Supreme Court. Hire more judges and dedicate them simply to the task of clearing the backlog, because corruption is a very huge challenge that is stopping development in Nigeria. Yes, how can one person alone take up 80 billion naira in a state that is extremely impoverished? Workers are old.
No line of conversation we're already towing on, because I was going to come to it. Judicial process in Nigeria. That is one major thing Nigerians have complained about, not just on corruption cases, but generally across certain cases that require speedy trial. We see cases of abuse, gender-based abuse and violence and all of that, that have certain psychological impact on victims involved, and people require speedy trials. So at this point, although you've already started talking about it, so I'd love you to touch a lot more on it. How can the judicial system be reformed completely to ensure timely and fair trial without a case of doubt in the hearts of Nigerians on criminal cases and corruption cases? What is the way forward, especially for the judicial system? Let's kick off with that.
Yes. What I was trying to say is that we could get more judges into the system and specifically focus some of them on these corruption cases, or even on gender-based violence or any of these issues, and draw up a reasonable timeline that trials will proceed on a day-by-day basis, and of course, get the heads of all the superior courts from the CJN to the Court of Appeal President and the various, the Chief Justice of the Federal High Court and all these courts, get proper rules of appeal, interlocutory appeals, procedure and everything to make sure that nobody is allowed to abuse or game the system. You appeal from High Court for one thing, get up to the Supreme Court, waste time, 2 years will pass, you come back again. All these things should be stopped. And then you set timelines. and reasonable exceptions to those timelines, that in 6 months to 1 year, once the prosecution are ready with the evidence, you simply either set the person presented before the court free, or he is declared guilty, and then he can exercise his right of appeal. Get more hands, knowledgeable men and women, let them start the process, put more resources. It will realize more money in terms of returning or getting back looted assets back to government coffers.
Okay, now let's tilt towards the solution-focused conversation now. And an attempt to, find a solution to it, we've seen the government come out with digital initiatives like the TSA, the Treasury Single Account, and IPPIS, Integrated Personal Payroll Information System, as a way to, curb corruption and monitor funds that are going in and out of the country. What's your thought on that, and do you think it has had any impact whatsoever in the fight against corruption?
All those innovations you are talking about is not about this administration. I mean, these were ideas that we are kickstarted during the Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala days. Yeah. Unfortunately, every system, every law, every policy is as good as those who are implementing it. There's no system that is foolproof. If it's a software, somebody designed it. Okay? And there's also somebody who gets the information from a computer systems to interpret. In fact, if you look at it, let me give you the case of INEC. INEC took taxpayers' money, set up systems which they were mounting that, it will catch, they will be giving you a blow-by-blow account as you vote. At the appropriate time, somebody switched it off and claimed there was a glitch. So every system is as good as who the person's operating it. Those are beautiful systems where we have men and women of good moral upbringing. But if we have people who don't have those qualities, what will happen is that at some point somebody will tweak the system and allow transactions that are not supposed to pass through. Because we are promising IPPIS that there should be no ghost workers, these ones. But till today, we still have so many instances at federal level and the states where they're still talking of ghost workers. And funny enough, when they discover ghost workers, nobody's ever prosecuted. Nobody's sent to jail. Nobody's asked to refund. So it's like an incentive. Put part the pay bill with 1,000 ghosts. Collect the money. Once they discover, you pocket the money. Nobody. Because those money, somebody signed for them. They pass through a bank account. And that bank account has a BVN. It has a name. So all these stories we are hearing, it is about the lack of political will. Once there's the political will to enforce the anti-corruption strategies, I will tell you, in 6 months' time, most of this rubbish will stop.
All right. Now let's talk about transparency and accountability. Like you said, there's BVN, there's NIN. There are so many ways for this to be tracked. We're not seeing people being brought to books, especially the cases of ghost workers and all of that being put to place now. At this point, what ways do you think the Nigerian government have what it takes to be completely transparent to Nigerians in the fight against corruption? We see how the Abacha loot is moving funny. The recovered assets from Abacha loot is moving funny. Do you think the government we have from each and every administration that has come in, because it looks like we still have lack of political will, like you always say, do you think they have what it takes, the political will, to actually be honest and transparent with Nigerians when it comes to the fight against money recovered?
The laws and policies are there. Like the Fiscal Responsibility Act says, 30 days after the end of every quarter, produce a budget implementation report of the outgone quarter. So the budget implementation report at the federal level of the first quarter, that's January to March, should have been ready by April. Second quarter, April to June, should have been ready by July. Third quarter, July to September, should be ready first week of October, first 30 days in October. But as we speak today, do you know the last budget implementation report on the website of the budget office? Third quarter, 2023. Third quarter, 2023. So the final quarter of 2023, no show. First quarter, second quarter of 2024, no show. How can you have transparency? So what is happening is that there is a race to the bottom, a competition of who will violate the law the most. Now look at today, there is a deliberate setup for opacity. As we speak today, the 2023 budget is still running. The 2023 supplementary budget is still running. The 2024 budget is running. there has been approved a supplementary budget for 2024. Where do you have this kind of insanity? Running 4 budgets at the same time. So it is a clear case for larceny and grand corruption, and it is deliberate. Anybody who's telling you anything, that's why it keeps happening on the political way, is a deliberate intention, the animals to confuse the ordinary people, to pull a wool over our eyes. Otherwise, there's no way you can tell me any reasonable human being will be running 4 budgets at the same time, refusing to issue implementation reports and doing things as if to say there are no laws. And of course, there are no consequences.
All right, talking about consequences. Now, let's talk about public participation and the role of civil society groups. At this point in time, what role do you think we as Nigerians can play when it comes to holding the government accountable? In as much as we've had the opportunity to hear the minds of Nigerians, yes, they talk about the government, and the corruption happening up there, but they also talk about the corruption happening down there among Nigerians. Each Nigerian wanted to cheat one person or another at any given opportunity. Thus always making, and then we also look at how attractive political office are, thus giving the notion that when I get there, I want to have my own share of the national cake. So this begs the question, do you think the populace even are ready to hold this government accountable and, participate in the fight against corruption? And if you think they are, what role do you think they can play with that?
Now, I don't want us to blackmail the common people. Buhari started this idea that he wants to fight corruption. And then when it was time to fight corruption, he brought his, a campaign slogan that the fight begins with me, and not with him who we elected and who made that promise. The common people are under all kinds of oppression and hardship. So most of the things you see people doing 1 or 2 things to cut corners to make ends meet is simply for them to even be able to feed. I'm not justifying anybody at the base level doing anything wrong. And it is being done because the president has been set. Why are you complaining about a man who altered a meter to collect an extra 20 or 30 naira when an accountant general is being charged with, who is supposed to manage the resources, is being charged with mismanaging over 110 billion naira? And you see him, nothing is happening to him. So the people at the lower level are trying to copy what they see happening, So people are stealing resources they don't need. Nigerians are ready, and my message will be clear. We should go back. It's like we've lost a lot of steam in the media and the civil society. We should go back to begin to hold those we elected accountable. Ask them to produce results of what they have done with resources given to them. Ask them to produce reports that are stated by law. And if they don't produce, we simply keep shouting on them, shouting at them, saying, you haven't done this. Let's not do this idea of, once an incident happens, media will feast on it for 3, 4, 5 days, max 1 week, everybody disappears. There must be a way of bringing back to the basics those fundamentals that are missing and are not being obeyed, and then we keep hammering on it until the authorities come back to their senses and begin to obey the law. That's my position on this.
In regards to that, we see how difficult it is sometimes for media to access the authorities to get the right information. Personally, as a media person, I have experienced a situation where I was trying to reach out to a government official to ask questions regarding something of public interest. And he was a spokesperson of that agency. And he told me, I'm a spokesperson, must I speak? I don't want to speak about it. So we find that there's that, holding back on information from the media and even from the people. This begs the question of moving forward, public trust and accountability. How can the government build public trust? Build public trust such that people would even believe what the government has come out to say, not looking at it as half-truth or don't even have access to this information in the first place. How can we, move away from all of that?
It is for us, who are the taxpayers, the electorate, to insist and not to get tired. You call him, he refuses to answer you. You send him an FOI, reminding him that he has a duty under the law to provide you this information. Your team can always liaise with good and working civil society organizations, and you can be doing FOIs in court. If they refuse to give you the information, you can go to court. You produce reports that are based on evidence, and we continue talking about it in civil society and the media. We shouldn't get tired. Otherwise, Nigeria is going down a very slippery slope. And if we don't wedge it a little bit, the next generation to come will never, ever be charitable to us.
All right, let's go back to Yahaya Bello's case now. With all that is playing out, with all the theatrics that's happening with this Yahaya Bello's case, how does this affect the future fight against corruption in Nigeria?
It's a very wrong message. You know, you recall sometime one of the APC party stalwarts said you can do anything. APC is like a cleansing mechanism. Once you commit a crime, you become a member of the APC. You are proverbially washed and clean, and your sins are forgiven. That may be what is playing now. So it's sending a very wrong message to the people. And like I keep saying, the authorities will never do what is right. Give them a yard, they take give them an inch, they take a yard. Give them a yard, they take a mile. That's the usual thing that happens. So it is up to you and up to me and up to the whole Nigerians, those who are oppressed, to draw boundaries somewhere and say, enough. You can't continue sitting on my head. I have a right to resist tyranny, not to allow you to violate my rights. You can't continue stealing the money that should have been used to send my child to school. You can't continue stealing the money that should have been used to send my daughter to the maternity ward so that she can be alive. So until we draw that boundary and line and have a moral repulsion against corruption, and not to say, oh, this is my thief, because at some point in time it becomes, this is my thief, he's from this tribe or from this religion. And the question is, even look at what we did during the election, all those tribal and religious things. Have you ever entered a filling station and brandished your religion so that now they're selling at about 1,000 because you are from religion X or from tribe B? They will give you at 600. And those of us who we are branded the Welling Wellers, once we come there and identify ourselves as the Wellers, they can even add 50 naira to our own. So these are the critical challenges. We must tell ourselves the truth and unite as those who oppress, to fight our oppressors, to tell them no more. Use the instrument of the law and policy to say, what we are doing is in violation. We can't take it anymore. If we don't do that, this thing will continue. It will even get worse in Nigeria as the hardship increases.
No, but I love the fact that you said Nigerians should use the law. It also boils down to information. Would you say Nigerians have access, Nigerians are equipped with the adequate knowledge of the law to be able to know when to speak up and know what to use to speak up? We see policies being implemented and very few Nigerians have adequate knowledge of these policies and know how to impact them. And the rest just complain on the basis of what they see. So Nigerians' education on the law and how they could use it to their advantage when it comes to holding public office holders accountable.
The average Nigerian knows, but there's what is called docility. You simply want to sit down and let another person fight your battle. It's just like the local government autonomy issue that is now in vogue after the Supreme Court decision. We all know local governments get money. Even in Abuja here, what do? All right? Maybe they come to collect element rate from you. Have we ever sat down in an estate meeting, in our church, in our mosque, or in any meeting we do, to get to the local government chairman and question them what they're doing with the resources they get from allocation and the resources they get from tenement rates and all the levies they collect? Have we ever tried to hold them accountable? We left them to run roughshod. There are just a few who are mismanaging these resources. They cannot win when you have millions of people who are determined and telling them that this rubbish has got to stop. We have to participate in budgeting. For every public procurement you do, you must publish it. Let us know. Let's see. Is it not because it was in the media that a vice president's house was renovated with 21 billion, that it has become a recurring thing? Since everybody has been telling them that what they did is fraudulent, has they sent anybody to jail? Yes, we may not be able to recover the money because they're in authority. But if we insist and elect somebody who will do the proper thing, those who use 21 billion to renovate a house can be brought to justice. There's no big deal. They can be brought to justice. Because it will be clear from evidence that that house wouldn't have needed more than 1 or 2 billion, and they'll be asked to refund the other and spend the rest of their life in jail, and not for them to be grandstanding and having high moral ground to be talking down on us. Is because we have not done the needful. Tomorrow, when election comes, we start dividing ourselves according to tribes and religion, and then we elect the worst among us to lead. So what are we complaining about? We have the knowledge, only that we don't want to use our heads and behave like reasonable persons.
All right, finally. Now, to end up on a positive note, in conclusion, do you have hopes that Nigeria would one day win the fight against corruption?
As somebody who has spent a lot of years doing human rights and fundamental freedoms as a lawyer, I'm almost believing like a preacher, because if the moment your pastor, your imam gives up hope, all right, if there is no hope, then there will be no incentive for you to do good, hoping that maybe you have a reward either in heaven or on earth. So in that capacity, I have hope. I keep striving and I keep encouraging other people so that I believe it may happen before the end of my life. We've been on this business since the 80s. I am believing God that before he calls me upstairs, we could come to a state where Nigeria will be set firmly on the path of development. I keep hoping.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Eze Onyekpere, for this very, very insightful and educative, discussion segment. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
My pleasure.
Like he said, there is hope. And we all hope that one day Nigeria will be great again. We hope that one day Nigeria would have a country where leaders are willing to serve and have the political will to serve Nigerians and not loot the funds or make Nigerians suffer as a result of policies being made. We hope that Nigeria will get to a point where even as Nigerians we would love our neighbors so well that we want to do the right thing by each and every one of us, and we would have good leaders enough that we would trust that they will put our interests at heart. Well, having said that, we've come to the end of this discussion segment. We'll be going on a quick break, and when we get back, we'll be looking at stories that made it to the front pages of our newspapers. Do stay tuned. We'll be right back.